Hi everybody, welcome to another video. This one's another cycle frame. I haven't done a cycle frame for a while, and in fact this is actually quite an old video, but it was one I had, so I thought I'd get it out and narrate it and put it up. So you'll notice there's no background noise, and by that I mean, you know, the sound of the spray gun, etc. I'm not sure what happened to it, to be fair. I normally like including it in the videos because it just adds a bit of atmosphere and people can see when you're pulling the trigger and things like that. So it's not there. So I apologise if it's spoilt the video for people. I think it's still worth watching without, but you know, it's up to you guys really. So cycle frame with an LPH80 1.2 tip. I'll put the settings on the screen so that you can see what settings I'm using. But first of all, you'll see me just putting a fine mist coat over the decals. Now there's 5 decals on this bike, and all I'm doing really is testing the reaction of the clear coat on the decals, because sometimes if you put too much clear coat on, it can react with the decals and it makes them fry up, you know, like or crinkle. So I'm putting a little bit of clear coat. I've actually cut a couple of them out, but I just put I think it was 3 from memory, 3 really light coats of clear, and then some heat just to get it a little bit of a layer over the top, so that when you start putting a bit more on, it doesn't have the effect of overloading the decal. Most of the time you'll get away with decals. People seem to find it a bit of a mystery sometimes, but it's not. It's just a matter of thinking how things work, and different vinyls, you know, the same decal made by somebody else may well react differently and used with a different clear coat. So it's just a matter really of finding what works the best, and just doing a few light coats just helps to stop it happening, really stop any problems happening. So it's worth remembering that if you're using decals on a cycle frame or a bike tank or whatever. Obviously with cars you probably don't come across decals that often, but certainly with the bikes and the cycles you do. So we're going to give the frame a light coat and then a full coat. So as I say, I've put the settings on the screen, but effectively we're half fluid for the first coat and full fluid for the second coat, even though it's only a cycle frame, so the area is not that big. I've kept the fan on full on the LPH80, and that's simply because it's not actually a very big fan anyway. It's about, they say about 5 inches, and that's at about 6-inch distance. I normally spray a bit closer than that. Well, you'll see it is closer than that. It's probably about 4 inches with this thing, with the LPH80. So there's not loads of overspray. It sprays at 1 bar. So as I say, there's not loads of overspray. So full fan. I think it gives better atomization with all the guns really. You'll notice nearly on all my videos, more or less without exception, I use full fan all the time. Even if it does create a bit more overspray because the thing that you're painting is only quite small. Obviously if you're doing car panels or something like that, it doesn't matter really, because it's all going to go on the, or most of it's going to go on the panel. Yeah, so it doesn't matter that much. So LPH80, a lot of people that watch the channel, and if you're new to the channel, then a warm welcome to you, will know that I have mixed views on the LPH80, and that's simply because I'm fortunate enough to have quite a lot of spray guns and a lot of mini spray guns as well, and I just find it difficult to see where it fits in my lineup, and something like this is where it is absolutely ideal for. It excels something like this. It's a very small gun, physically small gun, and they do I can't remember whether this is 70 millilitres or 80 millilitres, this pot. I think it's 70. And for you guys in the US and people on imperial measurements, you're going to have to convert that into fluid ounces because I'm not sure. But it's small. You can see the whole setup is small, which on something like this is absolutely ideal because it allows you to get into all the nooks and crannies without the fear of mainly banging the pot. You can bang the pot on lots of different things when you're doing cycle frames. Less so motorcycle frames really, I guess, but yeah, frames in general, because they're quite intricate. You can end up hitting the pot on all sorts of places, which obviously you don't want to do because you mark the clear coat. So in this particular case, this gun is absolutely ideal for it. It's a gem of a little tool, really well made minigun. I just think that it doesn't really, as an all-round gun, I don't think it cuts it really compared to other guns. On the cycle frame side of things, I actually prefer I got an SRI Pro Light in a 0.6, which is their little micro tip, and that runs at 1 bar as well, and that only has about a 2.5 inch fan, maybe 3 inch fan, so you can put that on the full fan. You don't waste anything on stuff like this, and it really gives a good finish. Probably no better than this, to be fair. It just seems to be much more suited. Certainly uses less material because I guess of that, that smaller fan. And yes, I know you can put the fan down on these, but as I say, they don't seem to atomize as well, I don't think. And it's not just peculiar to this, it's all the guns. And I'm not a downer on Iwata. I actually like Iwata. I've got more Iwata guns now than any other manufacturer. I've sold quite a few of my DeVilbiss ones. I've still got 2 GTI Pro Lights and 2 SRI Pro Lights. And that's it. I've sold all the rest because I've bought quite a few guns recently, and my head tells me that I can't sort of, keep all these guns and buy more, and my wallet tells me that as well. So, I tend to, I've sort of outed quite a lot of my older guns, although I've still kept some of them simply because they are good and I want to keep the range really. So yeah, as I say, this is probably the ideal use for an LPH80. Ideal for it, absolutely ideal. You'll see on the cycle frames, there's a lot of moving around. So you either need to move around the frame or you need to be able to move the frame around, if that makes sense. If you're doing cycle frames, particularly the clear coat, the base coat doesn't really matter so much because you can do the base coat however you feel like, and as long as you've got even coverage everywhere, it makes no difference. With the clear coat, because obviously clear coat effectively runs out. So if you can imagine, it sprays on in loads of little droplets, and then they flow into each other, and that's what gives you the smooth, shiny surface. Now, obviously, the quality of the gun atomizing that is part of it, but there's other parts to it as well. I always heat the clear coat up. I have done a separate video, which I'll try and remember to put in the description, over the advantages of heating the clear coat up, because it does allow it to run much better. And on something like a cycle frame, you want it to run into each other, well, and everything really. But it is just quite important on cycle frames because they are, they're normally tubes, so they don't sort of like have one side or two sides. They have a lot of different sides around the tube, if that makes sense. So when you come to doing it, you don't sort of like do one side then do the other. You've got to go round that tube, and you've got to try and get an even amount on that tube. So you're trying to get enough on there so that it's not dry, and enough on there so that it runs out nicely to give you a nice smooth shiny finish, but not so much that it creates runs, because depending where the run is, it can be a pain to get it out on a cycle frame, because it's just harder to sand things because it's awkward. Basically, it's fine if it was on the top tube at the top or at the bottom, then maybe not so bad. But if it's near the bottom bracket and places like that where you've got other tubes coming off of it, it's awkward. So it's best to try and get it right in the first place. and then the rest of it seems to look after itself. You'll see the temperature today is about 15 degrees Celsius, but you'll see that I'm putting heat into it anyway, and I'm not doing this after I've applied the first coat. Well, I am, sorry. What I'm doing is I'm doing this just before I apply the second coat. So you've allowed the sort of 20 minutes flash off time that you want, enough to get it slightly tacky. And then you're just putting some more heat into the frame. It's a metal frame, so it conducts the heat quite well. So it should transfer itself to all the areas of the frame within reason. So that when you now put your clear coat on, you've got warm clear coat, which runs nice and easy. And by that flows, sorry, flows is a better word than runs. Flows out nice and easy. So when you put it on, it will flow out to give you a good finish, but it's going to go off quite quick because of the heat in the frame. It's a fast hardener, not an extra fast. I prefer a fast hardener because I find a lot of the extra fasts tend to die back quite a bit, so you lose some of the shine, which if you're not worried about is fine, but most people are striving for a shiny finish, aren't they? So you'll see now we're putting much heavier coats on, and now it's just a matter of putting, or trying to put, as even amount as possible over all the parts of the tubing. So do it methodically. Do like one tube, then the connecting tube, then the next tube, so that you know what you're doing and keep an idea of what you're doing, so that you don't go over the same bit twice or three times, because then you are going to load the fluid up too much and you're going to get runs. But you don't want to leave dry spots, because if you leave a dry spot, by the time you've got to the other side of the frame and you realise you've got a dry spot, if you try and cover that dry spot up, you're going to get dry overspray to the left and the right, if that makes sense. This is real time, so you'll see that it takes, I haven't timed it, but it's about 6 minutes a frame. 6 minutes a frame, 6 minutes per coat, which is quite a long time. If you see it when I do bike tanks and that, depending on the gun, with this gun actually it's quite time consuming. You know, a reasonable sized bike tank takes about a minute 20 with this gun. So by the time you come to the finish, the clear that you first laid is still receptive to more clear, if that makes sense. So you could put a bit more on and it would run into the existing clear. Hope I'm making myself clear, for want of a better word, what I'm trying to say. But with a cycle frame, you need to get it, that section that you're doing, you need to get it done there and then. You can't come back to it afterwards, not unless you're going to put a whole new coat on. And you don't want to put loads of coats on a cycle frame. I always find, which is why I did like a half and one, the manufacturer of this Clearcoat recommends two full coats. But I find you don't need it on a cycle frame, because if you make the lacquer too clear on a cycle frame, because of the knocks and bangs, sorry, if you make it too heavy, too thick on a cycle frame, because of the knocks and bangs, you can tend to chip it quite easily, whereas I find thinner layers seem to be more durable. They seem to be more resistant to knocks and bangs, because it's a bit different than a car. A car you might wash. All right, if you have an accident, you're going to bang it. But with a cycle frame, you often get loads of bangs. You're going through bushes and, you know, rocks and all sorts of things. So you want to make it as durable as possible. And I find not putting too much clear on makes them much more durable. So we're coming towards the end now, and I've got some high resolution pictures, but you'll see it actually came out really, really well. And hats off to the LPH80, a great gun. I've had a few people say that I'm quite hard on it, and why don't I like it? Because it's brilliant, etc. And I wouldn't argue with the fact that it's brilliant, but it's not as good as some of the other guns. And most of the time, I'm trying to recommend things to people. You know, I'm not sponsored by anybody. I don't get paid to say anything. I say it because it's how I feel. But I'm trying to recommend things to people, and I realise they're not in such a position as I am, where you know you've got loads of spray guns, etc., to play with. So I tried to recommend something that I think will be, unless it's specific, something that will be useful to them as an all-round gun. And I just don't think the LPH80 is useful as an all-round gun. As a niche gun for certain things like this, for small blow-ins on bumpers or fenders, as you say in the US, things like that, yeah, it's great. It's great, but it's not a universal gun, and it is quite expensive, and there's loads of guns that do a similar job at half the price. So yeah, that's all I'm trying to say really, is that it's a great gun, but not if it's your only gun. So here's the finishing stuff. Anyway, guys, hope you like it. Came out superbly. Really happy with it, and it's been really, really durable. Okay, well, thanks for watching, everybody. Cheers. Take care. Bye-bye.